John Harbaugh finally breaks silence on Ravens' exit after emotional speech at Miami University. For nearly 2 decades, John Harbaugh represented stability in Baltimore. Through playoff runs, division battles, quarterback transitions, and eventually a Super Bowl championship, he became one of the NFL's most respected head coaches. That is why his recent speech at Miami University carried so much weight around the football world. This was not simply a former coach reflecting on a difficult career moment. It was a veteran leader openly discussing what it feels like when a franchise decides it is time to move on. And in a league where coaching careers can shift overnight, Harbaugh's words felt larger than football itself. Standing before the graduating class of 2026 at his alma mater, Harbaugh did not avoid the emotional reality of his exit from the Ravens. Instead, he leaned directly into it. He acknowledged that bad news can arrive without warning, and that even successful people eventually face rejection. His comments were calm, honest, and deeply personal. "Maybe they will tell you they don't want you anymore, and it's time to move on," Harbaugh said during the speech. It was the kind of statement that resonated far beyond a commencement ceremony, because everyone listening understood exactly what he was talking about. What made the moment especially powerful was the timing. Only months earlier, the Ravens had ended Harbaugh's 18-year run with the organization after the team failed to reach the playoffs. For many franchises, a coach surviving nearly 2 decades is almost unheard of in the modern NFL. But expectations in Baltimore had changed. A roster built to compete for championships had fallen short, and the organization ultimately chose a new direction after a heartbreaking late-season collapse ended with a missed field goal against Pittsburgh. That ending alone reflected how unforgiving the NFL can be. One kick, one moment, one final loss. Suddenly, years of consistency and credibility become secondary to immediate results. Harbaugh understood that reality better than anyone. Across 18 seasons with Baltimore, he endured only 3 losing campaigns while consistently keeping the Ravens competitive in one of football's toughest divisions. He also guided the franchise to victory in Super Bowl 47, cementing his place among the most accomplished coaches of his generation. Yet even legendary resumes do not guarantee permanent security in professional football. And that is where Harbaugh's speech became more than a reflection on losing a job. It became a lesson about resilience. Rather than expressing bitterness toward the Ravens organization, he focused on perspective. He encouraged graduates to recognize that setbacks often create opportunities that are impossible to see in the moment. That message carried additional credibility because Harbaugh himself was already beginning a new chapter. After his departure from Baltimore, multiple organizations reportedly showed interest in bringing him into their building. Coaches with his experience, leadership reputation, and postseason history rarely remain available for long. Eventually, the New York Giants emerged as the franchise willing to make the biggest organizational shift. And from the Giants' perspective, hiring Harbaugh represented far more than simply changing head coaches. It signaled a complete philosophical reset. The Giants had struggled to establish stability in recent years. Coaching turnover, inconsistent quarterback development, and roster uncertainty prevented the franchise from building sustainable momentum. Despite flashes of potential, the team managed only 4 victories last season. Fans were growing frustrated, and the organization desperately needed a respected figure capable of restoring credibility, both inside and outside the locker room. That is why Harbaugh's arrival immediately changed the tone surrounding the franchise. Around the league, coaches and executives understand the difference between rebuilding with uncertainty and rebuilding with structure. Harbaugh brings structure. He brings accountability. More importantly, he brings a proven understanding of how to guide players through difficult situations without allowing adversity to define the entire organization. And that approach became visible almost immediately during rookie minicamp. Rather than treating the sessions as high-pressure competitions, Harbaugh emphasized fundamentals, preparation, and discipline. He described the camp as more of a rehearsal than a showcase. To casual fans, those comments may not sound dramatic, but inside NFL buildings, that philosophy matters enormously. Young players entering the league often try too hard to prove themselves immediately, leading to mistakes, unnecessary pressure, and inconsistent development. Harbaugh instead focused on teaching players how to operate within a professional system before worrying about highlight plays. That patient mindset could become especially important for the Giants' young core. The organization believes players like Jaxson and Abdul Carter can become foundational pieces moving forward. Malik Nabers is expected to return and remain central to the offense, while younger contributors such as Arvell Reese and Francis Mauigoa represent long-term investments in roster stability. Harbaugh's challenge is not simply winning games quickly. It is building an environment where those players can grow into reliable contributors over multiple seasons. And this is where Harbaugh's experience may give the Giants a major advantage. Throughout his time in Baltimore, one of his greatest strengths was creating consistent culture despite constant roster changes. Veteran leaders came and went. Coordinators changed. Injuries disrupted seasons. Yet the Ravens almost always remained competitive because the organization maintained a clear identity. Toughness, preparation, discipline, and adaptability became defining characteristics of the franchise under Harbaugh's leadership. The Giants now hope that same identity can reshape their future, because talent alone rarely fixes struggling organizations in the NFL. Teams also need emotional stability during difficult stretches of a season. They need leadership capable of preventing frustration from spreading throughout the locker room after losses. Harbaugh has spent years navigating exactly those situations. At the same time, expectations surrounding him will remain extremely high. Fair or unfair, experienced coaches with championship pedigrees are judged differently. Fans will not simply evaluate whether the Giants improve slightly. They will want visible progress, smarter football, and evidence that the franchise is moving toward legitimate long-term contention. That pressure comes naturally with Harbaugh's reputation. Still, his speech at Miami University suggested someone who has already accepted the emotional complexity of starting over. Returning to the same campus where his football journey began likely gave him perspective that many coaches never fully experience. Before the NFL victories, before the national recognition, before the championships, Harbaugh was simply a college defensive back balancing athletics and academics. He graduated with a political science degree, earned scholar-athlete recognition, and built relationships that remained meaningful decades later. Receiving an honorary doctorate while surrounded by former classmates made the moment even more emotional. It reminded everyone watching that careers eventually become larger than wins and losses alone. Football may define headlines, but resilience defines legacy. And perhaps that is the real lesson Harbaugh wanted graduates to understand. The NFL constantly teaches people how quickly circumstances can change. One season can transform a coach from celebrated leader to former employee. One loss can alter an organization's direction entirely. But Harbaugh's message was ultimately optimistic. He was not mourning what ended in Baltimore. He was acknowledging that difficult endings often force people toward unexpected opportunities. Now, that opportunity belongs to the Giants. And for the first time in years, there is growing belief around the league that the franchise may finally possess the leadership structure necessary to rebuild correctly. Whether that process leads to immediate success remains uncertain. But if Harbaugh's career has demonstrated anything, it is that resilience, patience, and organizational clarity can eventually change everything.